team.
During the 16-bit era, in America and Europe at least, the Sega Mega Drive/Genesis went toe-to-toe with the mighty Nintendo, largely thanks to the likes of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. The original game was a truly stunning title when it was released back in 1991. As the 32-bit era emerged, it would have made a lot of financial sense for Sega to push Sonic the Hedgehog as much as possible. That didn't happen. Instead, Sonic Team chose to develop NiGHTS Into Dreams, which was something entirely different and something entirely amazing. Sonic the Hedgehog was a truly great game and an easy sell in many ways. Just look at him, he's adorable, cool and sassy, and look at the sheer speed of this game. Back in the early 90s, this was an incredible spectacle. The music, the crazy loops, the layers of parallax scrolling were a sight and a sound to behold. I remember seeing it running on the wall-mounted CRT of my local game shop as a small boy. My family owned the monstrous 8-bit Amstrad CPC 464, what a beast that was. And Sonic was just mind-blowing in comparison, visually and orally. Even Amiga fans had to begrudgingly admit that this was something a bit special. It was also a straightforward game in many ways. You move from left to right, jumping on the heads of things, exploring the fairly large and complex levels, racing across the finishing line and enjoying the amazing sense of speed and momentum. It was a smash hit, and it's really not hard to see why. As we moved into the PS1 and Saturn generation, many of us asked ourselves, what's Sonic going to look like in 3D? It's going to be absolutely amazing. Much ink was spilled and many dreams were trumped. Yuji Naka and his team, however, chose not to develop a Sonic sequel. Instead, they took a long break to come up with a more advanced game, as opposed to falling into the trap of producing continuous sequels. From an early stage, it was decided that the game would be based around replay value, where rather than simply progressing through levels and not looking back, there will be reasons to revisit stages and to improve your skills. Yeah, NiGHTS is a radically different project to Sonic the Hedgehog, although it does have key similarities, of course, once you kind of get your head inside it. Lead designer Takashi Iizuka said that NiGHTS was inspired by anime and Cirque du Soleil's Mystère theatrical performance. The team researched dream sequences and REM sleep, including the works of psychoanalysts Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, and Friedrich Holtz. Iizuka studied dreams and theories about them, such as Jung's theory of dream archetypes. Naka said that Nights reflected Jung's analytical shadow theory, whereas protagonists Clarice and Elliot were inspired by Jung's animus and anima. It was a fascinating and ambitious concept, no doubt about that, and indeed it looked amazing for 1996, sure. And like Sonic the Hedgehog, it has an irresistible sense of positivity and is dripping with charm. But compared to Sonic, it was also highly abstract. Despite the fact the visuals and the music and the subtext, if you will, holds great appeal to children, the game is actually quite hard, and while the feeling of flight itself is wonderful, especially with the Saturn's 3D controller, it does take quite a while to figure out what you're actually supposed to be doing. A small child will most probably need a bit of guidance to get into this one. This is no bad thing in and of itself, of course. I've very much enjoyed playing it with my own young daughter. Nevertheless, it requires effort and a certain amount of investment to get the most out of it, and that was in short supply in the console crowd of the 1990s. Well, it still is really, isn't it? And to the core games-buying audience, sort of post-pubescent males, I suppose you could say, wanting to sit down with a few beers and play FIFA 97 or batter each other senseless on Tekken 2, Nights was just weird, infantile, or otherwise unappealing. Let me explain to you why these people were all wrong. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Let me explain why, for me, Nights Into Dreams is a timeless, unforgettable classic, and why it's one of my favourite games of all time.
Sega マルチコントローラーでゲームの新しい世界が広がる。そしてあなたはもっとナイツになる。フライングファンタジーナイツ。
食べた。
セガマルチコントローラーデビュー。
うわっ。
Nights was never likely to sell, was it really, unfortunately, the world being the way it is? But regardless, it is a truly wonderful game, a game that Shigeru Miyamoto described as the one game that he wished he had worked on, a game that appeals to the better angels of our nature. Once you get your head inside it and allow it to weave its magic, it's a game that will stay with you for the rest of your days. So anyway, what is this game exactly? Well, players take the role of either Clarice Sinclair or Elliot Edwards, two children living in the city of Twin Seeds. They're both having a bit of a difficult time. Elliot misses a big shot at his basketball game and gets mocked by the opposing team. And Clarice is highly anxious about her big singing audition. As they lay their little heads down at night, they enter the world of NiGHTopia, where all human dreams are played out. An evil creature known as Wise Man is gathering power to take control of NiGHTopia. The children team up, or become, in a sense, knights, a rogue nightmarean, or nightmare dweller, trying to stop Wise Man. For the most part, Nights Into Dreams is a 2.5D video game where the world is rendered in 3D textured polygons, but gameplay is played on a two-dimensional field. The basic goal of the game is to reclaim the 4 stolen ideas from the 4 idea captures spread across the level and return them to the Idea Palace. NiGHTS traverses across the 2.5D plane through the skies, performing aerial acrobatics, defeating enemies and ranking up points. The gameplay is one of a kind, I think it's fair to say. If you were to try and stick NiGHTS into a predefined genre, it would be closest to a racing game, weirdly. The development of the game took longer than expected because of the team's inexperience with the Sega Saturn hardware and uncertainty about using the full 560 megabyte space on the CD-ROM. The team at one point thought that the game would consume around 100 megabytes of data, and at another, they considered releasing it on 2 separate discs. Iizuka said that the most difficult part of development was finding a way of handling the contradiction of using 2D side-scroller controls in a fully 3D game. Yuji Naka limited the flying mechanic to invisible 2D tracks because early beta testing revealed that the game was too difficult to play in full 3D. The standard Sega Saturn controller was found to be insufficient to control NiGHTS in flight, so the team developed the Saturn analog controller. It took about 6 months to develop, and the team went through many ideas for alternate controllers, including one shaped like a NiGHTS doll. Man, I'd like to get my hands on that one. And yes, all those snazzy moves that NiGHTS pulls off feel oh so much better with the Sega Saturn 3D controller. Yuji Naka explains, "We began to feel that NiGHTS would need a new, non-traditional controller. After much research, by the fall we had officially adopted the analog controller you see today. We actually came up with nearly 100 controller designs. We even challenged ourselves to come up with a control system that didn't use your hands. There was a no-touch ESP-style controller, a controller where you used your feet, and more. We even made a prototype of that foot controller. It was huge!" Laughs, inverted commas. Yeah, this 3D controller, I absolutely love it. To be honest, it's one of my favourite controllers of all time, although I know a lot of people don't like it that much. Not quite sure why. I even love the D-pad on it, funnily enough. It's lovely and loose. I get quite achy thumbs when I'm playing games at times. I find this one accurate and very comfortable. And also, it looks amazing. Look at it, it's like a sweet shop or something. Just want to eat those buttons. Needless to say, it works wonderfully with NiGHTS and very much contributes to this game's truly unique feel. NiGHTS Into Dreams was a financial disappointment back in the day, but I've never felt that this was due to the appeal of NiGHTS as a character. I look at my daughter's reaction to her, him, it, and it's plain to see the absolute lunacy of NiGHTS makes perfect sense to a small child. To me, NiGHTS, like the game itself, is beautifully abstract and ambiguous, allowing our brains to try and fill in the gaps. It's not distinctly male or female, it appears human but kind of isn't quite. She or he, I'm going to refer to her as she, as she always kind of felt feminine to me for some reason. Like Sonic the Hedgehog is a reassuring figure, an irresistible, relentlessly positive force that will overcome the darkness, a figure you can count on, someone who will sort everything out and make everything alright. To me, the difference, however, between Sonic and NiGHTS is that although Sonic the blue lightning-fast hedgehog is a pretty wacky idea for a character when you stop and think about it, he's very cute and cuddly and kind of childlike, at least he was in the old days. NiGHTS, however, has a very slightly uncanny quality to her, obtuse and a little bit alien. She walks that thin line between adorable and unsettling. She's almost like an angel figure, or even some obscure Shinto god. She's unknowable, really, and she's all the more magical because of that. The end boss is, of course, one of the most memorable aspects of this game. Character designer Kazuyuki Hoshino tells us a little bit about the ultimate big bad, Wise Man. In the story, Wise Man is like the all-knowing, all-seeing, be-all and end-all. He is the creator of creation. He is everything. He is the ultimate god. So I really wanted to sort of scale that and represent that visually. That sort of scale of what he represents. So I took inspiration from the Buddhist statue. You know, like a Buddhist statue, a typical Japanese Buddhist statue has multiple hands and they've got this sort of halo effect thing going on in the background. From when I was a student, I always was interested in dreams and what they meant. I read up a lot about it, the philosophy and academic side of what others think of it, like Freud and Jung. That's what really I was basing it all around. A curious fact is that according to the NiGHTS Into Dreams Japanese manual, Wise Man the Wicked, the series' main antagonist and god of all nightmare, is also a visitor/human from the waking world. The manual states that Wise Man was a visitor who was deprived of any ideas, and that he was the first intelligent life in the night dimension. As Wise Man is trying to open a portal to the waking world, it can be assumed that he is also trapped in the night dimension. Why Wise Man has no idea, and how he became a god, are unanswered mysteries of the series. And yeah, right there, that's why this game continues to spark such interest even after all these years. It's filled with ambiguities and interesting little enigmas. Tomoko Sasaki was a composer on NiGHTS Into Dreams. Her sound, helped along by Naofumi Hataya and Fumi Kumatami, is arguably what sold NiGHTS' surreal dream worlds and energetic gameplay. Quite rightly, it's often considered one of the best soundtracks in Sega history, let alone on the Sega Saturn, but in fact it was only Sasaki's third composition. Tomoko Sasaki got her start at Sega and seemingly video games in general with World of Illusion with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, the 1992 Genesis Mega Drive title. I was not aware of this until I made this video, and yeah, you can hear it right there. Never really occurred to me before. Bouncy, joyful, magical, and really quite unique. And similarly, the music in NiGHTS is joyful. It has a bouncy, dreamlike quality with chimes, trumpets, harmonicas, every instrument that could encapsulate the emotion of pirouetting through the sky gleefully as a purple-horned little leprechaun. It's absolutely wonderful. Nearly all of the soundtrack is fantastic in my opinion. It also ties in with probably the most obscure element in NiGHTS, the A-Life system. Throughout each stage are strange, friendly little creatures called Nightopians. After hatching them out of eggs, if you bother to take the time, you can carry them around the level or mate them with other creatures. You can even merge them with enemies, creating mutants called Meepians. On repeat playthroughs, this stuff affects the general vibe of the level. If the little Nightopians are happy, sections of the theme music change to reflect this. If you are horrible to them, the music in turn becomes darker. There are 4 different versions of each song, and these don't simply change instruments or rearrange pieces of the track, they're almost entirely distinct from one another. This A-Live system is presumably part of this drive for replayability that Yuji Naka spoke of, and it certainly does add something to the game, even though it is really quite subtle, and let's be honest, it probably would have been missed by a general audience. Not to NiGHTS aficionados though, we all think it's pretty damn rad, another unique element of this wonderful game. I was always drawn to the world of NiGHTS Into Dreams. I found it fascinating and abstract, and I would love to simply exist in one of these beautiful madhouses, at least for a few weeks or something, you know? Beats going to work, doesn't it? There are the amazing stages themselves, of course, levels designed to evoke dreamlike scenarios, often featuring surreal landscapes, shifting perspectives, and metaphorical imagery, and they are all unique, beautiful, and strange. But I was even more attracted to the real, inverted commas, world that Elliot and Clarice inhabit. Twin Seeds City. There isn't a huge amount of information out there about the creation of the city itself as far as I can see, but not to worry, we can see it for ourselves, can't we? The setting, to my eye at least, was some idyllic, near-future, immaculate small city, part Japan, part Los Angeles, and it also has a faintly Mediterranean vibe to me with its white stone and clay looking buildings. And of course, it was always drenched in sunshine. And the images of it are just tantalising to me, they always have been. I used to look at the screenshots in the old UK Sega Saturn magazine of this parade scene here with the balloons and the sort of squishmallows buildings there, and I just wanted to walk right into the frame, you know? Like the rest of the game, the setting is kind of ambiguous. You never know quite what it's supposed to be, or where it might be for that matter. Is this Earth? Is this the future? Some alien planet? Well, it's anything you want it to be, really. We can all find something in this setting. Whatever or wherever it is, it's the kind of place you'd like to live. Well, I certainly would anyway. In fact, if this is indeed the near future, I'd say that this is the kind of city we can all aspire to live in. This looks like a nice world to me, and it's an integral part of this most profoundly optimistic of games. One that, as I said earlier, appeals to the better angels of our nature. Yes, I stole that expression from Apocalypse Now, and I feel no shame in that. God bless this game. It shows us what the world could look like if it happened to be a nicer place. And then there's possibly the most special aspect of NiGHTS Into Dreams for me. That was, in fact, Christmas nights. I'd kind of watched my brother playing the base game from afar for the most part, and I became determined to get my own Saturn and my own copy of NiGHTS, and I was very excited about that fact. I got my Sega Saturn for Christmas '96. I was just turned 12 at the time. I read a lot of UK games magazines back in the day, and being the savvy consumer I was at that time, I knew that Sega was giving away free copies of Christmas NiGHTS to folks who bought a Saturn over the Xmas period. I went with my mum to the local high street and strolled into Dixon's and bought a Sega Saturn bundle. When the dude behind the till brought my package to me, I noticed that he had in fact forgotten or was blissfully unaware of Sega's festive promotion, and I had to politely inform my assistant, my mum, that the situation must be rectified immediately. Needless to say, I got my copy of Christmas NiGHTS, and what an experience it was, and still is. So what do you get? Well, you get a very nice intro. One level of NiGHTS Into Dreams dressed to the nines in Christmassy trappings. You can play as either Clarice or Elliot, and when you complete it with both characters, you get a nice little ending to the tiny story they set up in the intro. You also get this amazing song.
dream I could see you are not far away. Anytime, any place, I can see your face. You're that
Smoother than Barry White on ketamine. When you've completed the game, you get to open your presents. This is a match the picture type game thingy, and for every matching pair you find, you get a gift. These range from really nice pre-rendered images and concept artwork, etc, etc, along with some trailers for the full game, an amusing karaoke mode, a time attack and link attack mode, some other stuff, and you get to play Knights as Sonic. This game had a very clever system that uses the system's internal clock, powered by a little battery, to know what time of year it was, and the game would reflect this. By playing the game on specific dates, special features such as new backgrounds, costumes for the characters, and Easter eggs would appear. You had Winter Nights, New Year's Nights, April Fool's Nights, Father Christmas would appear on December 24th/25th, and lots of other neat stuff too. Now, in the days before widespread internet use and mobile phones and Animal Crossing and whatever else, this seemed like some sort of crazy black voodoo magic. I thought it was amazing at the time, and I still think it's pretty neat now. And I very much enjoy putting it on when we get into December and seeing the game transform from Winter Nights into this. Completely unnecessary, completely amazing, and completely free. At the time, I thought Christmas Nights was genuinely a Christmas gift from Sega. In hindsight, I realised that it was basically an extended demo intended largely to get kids to buy a big-budget game that had sold somewhat disappointingly. However, I still believe that it isn't just a demo. This little gaming EP is so filled with magic, enthusiasm, and a sense of fun that I'm sure at least some folks at Sega just wanted to spread a bit of good cheer. I spent a lot of time on this little channel harping on about the unique magic of 90s Sega, and this game is really emblematic of that era. It's a truly unique flashpoint in gaming history, a snapshot of the genius and insanity that was the Sega of that particular period of time. There's a distinct aesthetic to many of these 90s/early 2000s Sega games that has, over the years and decades, seared itself into my brain. Virtua Racing, Virtua Fighter, Daytona USA, Sega Rally, Virtua Cop, and even games like NiGHTS Into Dreams and arguably the Shenmue series almost seem to exist in the same extended universe, a beautifully abstract realm of simple polygonal forms, swaying palm trees, joyous primary colours, and soaring blue skies. As I get older, wiser, slower, and slightly fatter, for better or worse, I don't think I'll ever get tired of getting swept away from time to time by the irresistible positivity of these exquisitely abstract, sun-drenched playgrounds. Along with titles like Shenmue and Panzer Dragoon, this is a case of Sega Studios of the 1990s being too good for their own good. You might even say they overestimated their audience. It's a game that for me is all the better for being left abstract and not really explaining itself. We interpret and we learn by doing. Our imaginations try to make sense of the fantastical, bizarre images they're presented with, and they try to join the dots up for us. Thus, if we choose to invest in it a little bit, we are fully engaged. The central idea of a young child being worried about something, struck by a bad case of performance anxiety, and finding the courage and strength to resolve this crisis as they dream, is such a simple, childlike yet brilliant premise. What could be more pure, abstract, and universal? Not much. The sensation of flight, the replayability, the adaptive music, the A-Life system. Where else could you have this kind of experience? Only in your wildest dreams.